RC racing is a very fun, if expensive hobby to have. Though unfortunately the number of people partaking in it is nowhere near as large as most of us would like it to be. I'm not necessarily here to rant about how one specific thing is the end-all be-all cause of this and what we need to do to fix it. This video is to do two things: to show how many different angles this issue can be looked at from, and to create a discussion as to what we can do to help this hobby we love grow. Before we begin, however, I'd like to encourage you to hit the like button and comment what you think will help the hobby of RC racing grow. Now the thing is, if you were to look at RC from a strictly racing perspective, it would seem like a niche hobby. But the opposite is actually true. Surface RC as a whole is actually quite a large hobby that includes not just racing but drifting, drag racing, speedrunning, and crawling, all of which fall under that umbrella. This brings me to the idea that it's much easier to bring in people who are already into RC as a whole, that includes drones, than it is to get someone who's never actually held a radio before. This is part of the reason why I like RC tracks that also happen to have a hobby shop right next to it. It's that exposure that gets more people into racing as a whole. There have been quite a few people who I know simply walked into the hobby shop, saw the track, and were like, "Oh, that looks like fun." Lots of times, those same bashers will bring their rigs to turn a few laps at the track. Fast forward a few months and they're now racing. Of course this doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen often and it's nice to see. It's why I don't think we should treat these different parts of our hobbies as mutually exclusive. If you're into drag racing, see if there's a local track nearby and visit. I also mean this vice versa. If you're into RC racing, why not go to a crawler event and see what it's like? You may be surprised. Now to contradict what I just said, whereas these different parts of Surface RC may have their similarities, they do have their differences. Let's focus on probably the largest part of Surface RC, bashing, and compare it to racing. There is one very crucial difference between the two. The majority of big bashers that people actually buy are RTRs, whereas most, if not all, RC racing rigs are kits. In the words of a very cool dude, there is a very big difference between a family walking into a hobby town and buying an RTR or ready to run, tracks a slash only to run it that very day, and say buying a B6.3, buying the electronics needed to make it go, building it, soldering it up, then setting it up for your specific track. Of course, for us who have been into the hobby for a while, this is completely normal. But for a basher or just someone new who wants to go out and drive, that's a tall order. Especially in the real world where we have work and school, and in my case, both. It's the main reason why I think Losi coming out with that 2250 roller was a very good move. I saw a lot of people at my last race at Columbus who had just bought that roller and were racing for the first time. It was a nice thing to see. But personally, I think they can go further. Take for example Team Associated. They own Reedy, and Reedy makes pretty much every electronic needed to make a buggy go. Your or my personal feelings aside from the quality of these electronics aside, they work. And I don't think there's a lot stopping Associated from releasing an RTR B6 with Reedy electronics. They already made a drag car that with a few tweaks is already ready for drag racing, so I don't think a B6 is much of a leap. Of course it would be more expensive than say a regular B6.3 kit, but I think for a lot of people the convenience of already having a car ready to go would outweigh any extra costs needed. I'm not saying get rid of kits, far from it. I'm saying to give people the option. At the moment though, I think that if you already know how to build a kit and have the time, offer to build it for someone new. They will thank you. Also, a little side note, while I was writing this, Team Associated announced the RB10 RTR buggy that seems to be based on the old B5, so that's definitely a step in the right direction in my opinion. This goes to any track owners or race organizers. Big races are quite fun. They make for cool headlines. The problem with them is the time commitment needed for them. As much as I love this hobby, I'm not really doing to camp out in my car for the weekend for the next SOS race, and I know I'm not alone. Or if they do it the same way they did last time, I don't feel like driving home at 3 AM. Sometimes it's just nice to have a regular club race every once in a while, or more than once in a while with no stakes, no stress, just regular ass racing. This is more of an issue with 8th scale as nitro races can go on for well above an hour, but it can be a bit of an issue with 10th scale depending on how large the actual race is. I remember the last Snap Hard race I went from 11 AM to 8 PM, and that's not including getting there early and actually getting a spot in the pits. Having simple club races where there are no stakes and people can simply have fun will create a more relaxed experience. Having a more relaxed experience will keep people coming back not necessarily to win, but simply to have fun driving around a track. After all, that's what RC is about. This is one thing that I feel needs to be said when it comes to the modern day hobby. Modern day manufacturers seem to be stuck in the 1980s and 90s when it comes to marketing. What do I mean by this? What I mean is they're sleeping on the largest modern day marketing source, social media personalities. Now, I'm not saying this just because I have a YouTube channel, nor am I saying this out of spite or jealousy of top-level drivers who get flown out to different events or may not get free stuff. What I'm saying is it's much easier to invest your time and money into a social media personality that already exists than it is to try and make one out of a top-level driver. Again, I mean no ill will towards any top drivers I may mention in this video, but I simply want to make a point. Someone who's browsing on social media is much more likely to come across someone like Mark Santamaria or Ryan Harris, or even an inactive channel like Jang from URC, than they are to come across David Ongaro or Ryan Mayfield. The issue, I feel like, is that manufacturers try to have these top-level drivers do everything. They want them to compete at a top level, promote their brand, and be an online personality all at the same time. And that person simply doesn't exist. A good example of this is a channel like UAV Productions. Drone companies sponsor his channel, send him things to review. In exchange, they get thousands and sometimes millions of people to see their favorite YouTube personality that they probably watch every other day use their products. It's basically like celebrity promotion in a way. This doesn't just extend to RC as well. Just look at how large esports is thanks to both YouTube and streaming. It's why I think having big RC races streamed on Live RC and only Live RC is somewhat of a daft idea. Having them streamed on both YouTube and, in my opinion more importantly, Twitch, is a much better idea. These platforms not only have much larger audiences, but a much younger audience as well. An audience that for years has been, for lack of a better term, misunderstood. That's all for now. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the like button and comment what you think will help the hobby grow. I'd like to get a discussion going. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon where I post updates about my next videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.